ancient and iconic building in San Francisco, a building that was constructed in 1907 after the devastating earthquakes. It's only appropriate that this is home to Notion. Notion, of course, is the productivity powerhouse, started in 2013 by Ivan Zhao, Simon Last, and then Akshay Kothari joined them a couple of years in. It's got all the makings of the Silicon Valley dream. It started strong, went almost belly up, came back in 2016 in a new avatar, and today has over 100 million active users, $330 million in funding, and a $10 billion valuation. It's hoping to become the everything app as it takes on Google and Microsoft. To talk to us about the past, the present, and the future is co-founder Akshay Kothari, joining us now on Voices from the Valley. Stay tuned for the Notion story. Akshay, it's great to see you again, and thanks so much for having us here at the Notion headquarters, a pretty iconic building constructed in 1907, and this is now home for you.
It is our new home. We just moved in here about a month ago, and it feels like graduation from maybe kindergarten. We're on Market Street now, and it's a sign of our business also moving up market. Starting to, actually really see more and more enterprise customers use Notion. And so it's fitting for us to come to Market Street.
Yeah, and it's also fitting because this is a timeless building, and that's the ambition, right? To build timeless products. So it kind of converged.
It very much is. Our ambition is to build a timeless tool. In fact, all these conference rooms are named after timeless tools that we look up to. And we hope Notion is something that will be around for generations to come.
Let's talk about Notion and the many pivots that you've had to make along the way, from the start in 2013 to, of course, the big breakout moment in 2016 to where we find ourselves in 2025. I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised because as I was driving down the highway, I see a billboard and it says software is beautiful. Now, I've heard software being described as many things. Beautiful is not one of them. But take me through why you're placing all your bets on software being beautiful.
Well, it really goes to our ethos of the company. I think we are rooted in a lot of the work that computing pioneers of the 70s did. One of them, Douglas Engelbart, really talked about augmenting human intellect. And so when you drive by, you see all these billboards about AI replacing humans. That's not our ethos. Our ethos is very much about augmenting people in a way that can make them do more. And it goes back also all the way back to our first office 12 years ago was in a design studio. And that intersection of liberal arts and technology is where we love to thrive.
And that's where Ivan thrives.
That's where Ivan thrives.
In that intersection. I mean, this looks a little bit like a chair museum as well, because I believe he handpicks every chair that we find here. And they're stunning pieces, by the way.
Handpicks every chairs, but not just chairs. I think every piece of furniture, down to the pen we're using, is something Ivan picks.
Curates everything.
And I think it's very important for him because he really thinks about the environment we work in. We are trying to build a timeless tool, and he wants to make sure we are surrounded by timeless tools that we're inspired by. So the natural light, the things we're using around us really pushes us.
Jazz in the background.
The jazz music in the background. It really pushes us to do our best work.
So let's talk about AI and what that's going to mean now as far as Notion's future is concerned. How do you see yourself making an AI pivot?
Where AI is like new electricity for us. We've spent about a decade building an incredible editor, an incredible database where people are doing lots of work. There's tens of millions of people using the product. And now what AI does is it infuses all this power. One of the things that we always hear from people is that people really love the product, but they find it hard to really customize it or build it to a place that they would like. And AI enables that. AI knows how all the different parts of Notion work. And so now you can essentially speak English or your language and and it converts it into a setup that is customized for you.
So the think it, make it philosophy is being taken forward courtesy AI today.
Correct. Correct. And in some ways, people had to do this work, or people had to rely on the community to build the things that they can use, and now they can build it themselves. This idea that every person in this world, there's 1 billion knowledge workers, and every one of them can create a customized software by just asking it what they want.
So here's what I want you to address now, Akshay, because I know that the ambition of Notion when it started was to be the building block, was to be the Lego equivalent of the software world. From that to now the ambition of being the everything app and kind of taking on the big boys. This arc, this journey that you're transitioning to, what does that mean in terms of what you change inside and what you change on the outside as well?
Well, in some ways, there's a connectivity to that. We always thought that people are drowning in too many tools, and we always thought that maybe fewer tools that can actually help you do your work was actually better. And so instead of every person inside a company using 100 tools to do their work, we thought Notion can enable you to do all of that in one place. Now, what AI has done is that really enable that for the long tail. And people come to Notion for all sorts of very interesting use cases.
Okay.
Some people are,
What's the most interesting use case?
I think people use it to, in the personal side, track their workouts, to manage their plans, to figure out their fridge inventory for what they're cooking in recipes in Notion, all the way to the work where people are managing their projects and their OKRs and they're running their company on it. And with an interesting product which works for 5 people, but then also the same product works for 50,000 people. And that's quite unique, basically having 4 orders of magnitude difference, and it's the same product. And so it has to be simple enough so that the next college student can use it, but also it needs to scale so that when they go on to start a company and it becomes 10,000 people, the product continues to scale.
So, what's been the big learning in making this much more of an enterprise-oriented? As you said, the product remains the same, but from a distribution point of view, to take this to enterprise customers, what's been the big learning there?
Well, there's a lot of focus on sort of security and privacy and controls that we've built, but the ethos of the company is the same. What we're seeing now is that the consumers who were using the product maybe 5 years ago, they've gone on to start a company, and they've gone on to, that company has become an enterprise. And so in some ways, our focus is to make sure that the end user, the customer, continues to find value, continues to find the innovation and the creativity in the product. Part of the time, people, when they think about going up market or serving enterprise customers, I feel like the product becomes boring. Product becomes robust, or product becomes like, and I don't think we want to make that trade. We want to continue to be a tool people love. We want to build software that is beautiful, and at the same time, something that is secure, that your IT person or your CTO feels comfortable using.
So, as you make this journey now, what do you see as being the next steps necessary? I mean, some of the fundamentals of the company, which was basically to ensure that it is profitable from the get-go, of course, after having almost gone belly up to then restarting in 2016, the idea has always been to sort of stay profitable. As you look at the future, profitability, as you look at enterprise, I mean, what could we be talking about in terms of potential revenue expansion?
The company continues to grow, and at the moment, we're really sort of moving towards a path where we'll get to $1 billion in ARR. As you said, in the coming years, I think not too distant future. And as you said, we've been cash flow positive for many years, and something that I grew up in Ahmedabad, and my roots are Rajasthan, so it's something that my dad approves of.
Cash flow is king.
Cash flow is king. And it's quite rare, actually, in the Valley to have that, right? I think to have a business that continues to, almost the business continues to fund our expansion. And I think part of it also comes from our ethos of keeping the team small. We care a lot about talent density. We care about having the fewest number of people here that can have incredible leverage in terms of what we build and what we can do, and to give that leverage to our customers as well.
You're talking about people, and we're also talking about AI, and I think we're almost in this race at this point in time with companies claiming that, look, 20% of our code is now being done by machines, 30% is being done. It's almost become this sort of, slogan. How are you seeing that? I mean, how do you find this balance between what machines can and should do and the contribution that humans should and will continue to make?
I think Notion has a slightly different ethos. I think a lot of people talk about artificial and general intelligence, AGI, and I think a lot of the focus is on replacing humans and being as good as humans or better than humans. We really think about it as augmenting human intelligence, and this idea that what can a human, with the help of AI, with the help of robots, can do? Like, what can we do together? And I'm actually extremely optimistic and bullish for the world, because I actually think that so much of your day-to-day life is currently focused on all these monotonous things that you wish you didn't have to do.
Yeah.
And so I think you can kind of take two different views, which is like, will those jobs go away, or will people's 30% of their time will be recovered by people, and people will be more creative, and people will suddenly have the time to build things in the world that they didn't have before. I feel that way right now. Like, I feel like, oh, there's all these things that AI is helping me with, which means that I can build so much more.
So what are you building today?
We're building so many things so if you just think about Notion, like even 2 years ago, we were focused on a singular product, which was Notion. In the last 2 years, we launched Notion Calendar last year. We launched Notion Mail this year. And we're slowly becoming the suite or the connected workspace that the future generations are using. We want to get to a point where people don't have to use any other tools. They can live in this deeply connected world where your meetings have the perfect meeting notes in Notion, and your emails can schedule meetings perfectly in the calendar, right? And all these connections that should have existed actually in the last 2 decades, but haven't. And so that's an area that we have really expanded, and things that we're able to do now because we're all accelerated by AI.
But this is a space dominated by the big boys, right? Between Google and Microsoft, it's the lion's share of the market. Now, how do you take on these large legacy incumbents? What is the strategy to go after a share of that pie? And what do you see as the addressable market for yourself?
It is a multi-decade path, and it has been done before, so I'm excited about that. I was in school, maybe in college 20 years ago. 20 years ago, Google Docs and Gmail came into life, and when I was in school, it felt like the best thing since sliced bread. Like, we all grew up using these products, and when I went to work, I demanded that we should use Google products because that's what I grew up with.
That was the gold standard.
That was the gold standard. And if you talk to students today, high school students, college students, startup founders, they're all growing up on Notion. They're all so used to having this flexibility in the workspace. The way Notion knows them is very much the only way they know how to work. They are going to go on to build the next generation of enterprises that will all run on Notion. And so I think part of our biggest bet is to make sure that we inspire the future generation to be using Notion.
So that's the bet that you're making, but let's talk about the expansion as well. I mean, outside of here in San Francisco, in the US, you've got offices in Ireland, you've now got your first engineering center outside of the US in Hyderabad, in India. How critical is India going to be as part of your strategy?
Oh, India's going to play a big role. So outside of the US, as you said, the only engineering office we have is Hyderabad, and we're continuing to invest quite a lot of investment there. We're growing the team quite a bit. It actually started a couple of years ago when we acquired a company in India. And if you have to think about Automate is the company we acquired, and when you think about like all the future developers who are going to really build the tools of tomorrow, I think India is already the #1 or #2 market in terms of developers and knowledge workers. And so I think we're very excited about the market in India, both from a standpoint of us growing our team there, but also the market.
As a user market.
Yeah.
What numbers do you have in India today?
I think if you look at the number of unicorns around the world, like what percentage of them exist in India, it's starting to grow quite a bit in the last few years.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are customers of ours. And this happened without us being there in the early days, right? So again, it was probably a designer who decided, actually, my portfolio looks better on Notion, my work looks better on Notion. They bring it into their company, and in a couple of months, the entire company is using it.
So, staying with India, the expansion has been by way of M&A through an acquisition. Is that potentially something more that you could consider in India at this point in time?
I think we definitely look at that as a way to expand, but we're also, I think the acquisition became a core hub for us in Hyderabad. And so now that we have such great engineering leadership there, it gives us the ability to really sort of invest in it more.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that I'm really excited about, especially because I've spent some time in India myself, is that our office in Hyderabad is like a front office. It's an office that is building core products that is used by everyone around the world. It's not a support center. It's not a build these things so that people here can build. No, they're building things that literally our global customers are using, and they're a core part of our strategy. This was important for me because, of course, I grew up there, but I also worked there for 3 years when I was at LinkedIn. And I saw the talent. The talent we have there is comparable to talent, some of the best talent we have here. And we think it's an important part of our strategy to continue to invest it there.
You bring up LinkedIn, and I don't know how many people will remember how you ended up at LinkedIn in the first place. As I said, this is in a way your third entrepreneurial innings, if I could call it that, because in Stanford you launched Pulse, which was your startup then, and it took you 11 weeks to take it to the market, because you were supposed to take it to the market as part of your project work that you were doing at Stanford. From there to selling that company to LinkedIn for $90 million, what has been the biggest entrepreneurial lesson so far for you, Akshay? The lessons that you've taken from that experience that you use here at Notion?
So actually, before Pulse, there was a bunch of failed projects, a lot of them that didn't work. And I sort of think about, I think I got lucky in Pulse in that it was built as a class project. Steve Jobs mentioned it in his keynote.
And that was the big breakout moment.
That was the big breakout moment. So I feel like in many ways, I got lucky a few times. But the lesson I take with me from the failed projects is to just focus on the problem, the customer. I think when you're young, it's very easy to feel like you want to be a founder, you want to be an entrepreneur. It really, and it's amazing. I feel like it's actually great that people think of that as a viable career now. But what really matters at the end of the day is whether you're solving problems, whether you're making someone's life easier, whether you're saving people money, saving people time. That's the thing that makes it long-term sustainable.
Yeah, and part of the lessons and learnings from the failed projects that you're taking forward here in Notion to some of the new ideas and approaches that you're instilling here as part of the culture. And I know that one of the commandments is that, you don't build anything ugly. But what are some of the others?
I think there's 4 values at Notion that we care deeply about in terms of how we work. And the first one is that we're all owners of our mission. Our mission is to help build beautiful tools that can help build your life's work. The second one is that we're all pace setters. We're all truth seekers. And then the last one is we're all kind and direct. And those values very much, define the work we do. And we've picked those words, over a course of 18 months, really playing around with all sorts of different words to make sure it's authentically us.
Yeah.
So, for example, kind and direct is something that was very deliberate. You can say that you want everybody to be kind, but I think that can be sometimes misinterpreted as just being nice to each other.
Yeah.
And I think we added the word "and direct."
Okay.
Because we want people to push each other to do our best work. Like, we don't think it's going to be, we don't think we're going to operationalize our mission by just being nice to each other.
Yeah.
We will have to push each other and debate, and that's where the truth seeking comes through, right? So I think we've thought about these values, and of course, I think what the outcome of all of that is to build something that is beautiful, and beautiful not just in terms of how it looks, but in terms of how, I think there's like a positive emotion you feel when you use Notion. And think of like how many work software makes you feel that way. There's very few.
Yeah.
And I think part of that comes from sort of the work that the team puts in to like sweat the tiny details. Like, things could be 1 pixel off and you could go ship it. But I think people here care about that being right. And sometimes it feels kind of painful. It's like, oh my God, like we've been working on this for 3 months. Why is it not out yet? But we sweat the details. And the outcome of that is we build something that's beautiful, that makes you feel good.
So you would sacrifice speed for perfection?
That's where our values are interesting. We have one value that's pace setting, the other one is truth seeking. And by design, they have to fight. Because as a startup, you have to have a sense of urgency, but you also have to make sure that you're truth seeking for the right things. And there can be actually interesting debates here, right? So for example, decisions that are clearly reversible, you might want to pick pace setting.
Yeah.
You want to move fast because you can roll back, you can do some changes. Things that are irreversible, like, I don't know, opening a new office, starting a new product, I think we like to truth seek a lot before we take an action on those.
You know, I want to go back to your equation with Ivan. And again, I don't know how many people remember this or perhaps even know it, but you were one of the first few investors in Notion when Ivan started the company in 2013. And it was only until much later that you actually decided to come on board. You know, take me through to what made you want to leave LinkedIn and say, okay, Notion is where I believe I'm going to find my truth.
I think also very serendipitous, right? So I think I invested in 2013, right out of the Pulse acquisition.
Yeah.
I had made a little bit of cash, and then
a little bit.
And then I think as people do in the Valley, I think people choose to pay it forward.
Yeah.
And so I think Notion was my first investment, and I invested because Ivan is someone I tried to hire at Pulse. He was a designer, and I lost that battle. And so when he's starting a company, I said, here's my check. I'd love to support you. And of course, I was extremely inspired by his vision of democratizing software. And but it's been I think first 3-4 years, I thought I'd made a mistake because the company didn't really launch a product, ran out of money. And only in 2017, it started to sort of emerge out of the shadows. And in 2018, I think I was here for one of those like summer planning exercises as part of LinkedIn, Microsoft.
Yeah.
And I had breakfast with him, and you could see the numbers moving every week.
Yeah.
And he asked me if I could join him as the COO. It was only 8 people back then, so it's pretty small. And I don't know what, but I never thought of a different opportunity. I never considered doing anything else. But as soon as Ivan said it, it clicked that this felt like the right opportunity. And it was a big decision, which to me professionally, I sort of knew that was the right call. But personally, I was, based in Bangalore. We just had a kid. I think to bring them back.
Move everything here,
It was a big decision. So I took the summer to convince my wife that this is something we should do. And 4 months later, I came here, became the 9th employee here.
And a co-founder as well. So how does it work between how you split your responsibilities, how you kind of debate and discuss on what the next steps should be, how you strategize. I mean, it's easier said than done, but you're working towards a common purpose, you're working towards a common goal, but very often you may end up looking at things from a different lens. So how do you build in that alignment? What has that been like for you?
I think between the co-founders, I feel like we have one job, which is to make Notion win. And I feel like, I think people ask me this, but I feel like my own role has changed so much in the 7 years I've been here. So when I was hired as COO, I was responsible for everything except product, because product is what Ivan was focused on. And so I helped build our go-to-market teams, our people, finance, legal teams. I did that for 4 or 5 years. Then I hired the leaders and I nuked myself out of all of those jobs. So I think 2 years ago, I had nobody reported to me. I was essentially like an individual contributor just hacking away on AI things. And about a year ago, Ivan said that he wanted me to take on product. So now I work on product. But that can change tomorrow. And at the end of the day, I think part of what makes you feel like the ownership mindset is that, if I have to, I don't know, order kombucha for the team, I would do that. That could be my job. Or if I need to go out there and talk to people as a way
That's such a Valley thing. The CEO is ordering kombucha for the team.
Seems like a great value add. The engineers and the designers are really the people building.
Yeah.
In many ways, we are making sure we are setting the vision, we are cheerleading them, and we're supporting them in every way we can.
But as you look around you today, Akshay, and it's all about AI, and what I hear from everybody is this time it's very different, and this is unprecedented. I mean, I think Mary Meeker's report talks about unprecedented times, like over 50 times in that 300-plus page report. What do you find the most exciting aspect about what we're seeing because of generative AI, and how it's shaping behavior, how it's shaping consumption today, and what it could potentially mean in terms of innovation for companies like yours?
It really feels there is something different in that how useful it has already been just in 2 years, how quickly the behaviors are shifting, and also the fact that it's permeating through every industry, every function. There isn't any function you can talk about where people are not using it or leveraging it in meaningful ways. And so maybe the thing that feels different is the pace. Somebody said this recently, which really resonated with me, is like, we all grew up and like evolution just happened, like you didn't feel it. I think last 2 years feels like we're experiencing evolution. Like it's so fast that what happened last week is already old news today.
Yeah.
And so the pace is quite fascinating.
How do you engineer in an environment like that, where as you pointed out, what was exciting and cool a week ago is obsolete today? I mean, how much of what you're building and even the culture do you need to sort of break on a daily basis just to be able to keep pace with the kind of change that we're seeing?
There's no other way. I think you just have to stay connected to everything that's going on. It is something that is almost necessary for every company to stay relevant. And part of it is like, I think sometimes I get grief from my team saying like, hey, we did this planning, just finished planning, and now you're already changing plans. But it's like, but that's just the world we live in now. Like, I think what was true in December is just not true in March anymore, right? And so part of it is you have to sort of throw away the dogmatic things you have inside your company, and you have to rethink it from a standpoint of like, well, if I was trying to build a new company today to take on Notion, what would I do? And then I have to do that, right? I think that's the only way to stay relevant.
So what are you most paranoid about today, in terms of staying relevant, in terms of why you believe you continue to have the winner's mindset? I mean, what are you most paranoid about today?
Well, as we discussed, I think we're up against some of the giants who've had decades of distribution advantage over us, right? So the thing that keeps me up at night is primarily like distribution.
Yeah.
I want to get to a point where hundreds of millions of knowledge workers are using Notion every day. And that is my ticket to staying relevant as a way to make sure that we are going to be considered as a tool, as a company that is amongst the top 3 things you buy when you start a company. Like, we have to be in that top 3 list, because if we're not, then we're not mission critical. And we want to build something that is mission critical, not for a small niche, but for hundreds of millions of knowledge workers.
You know, you talked about the big boys. I'm sure the big boys have come calling, have come knocking. Is that an eventuality that you consider? Have you looked at it, or would you look at it in the future, should that to happen?
Well, as you know, Pulse was acquired by LinkedIn,
Yes.
and then LinkedIn was acquired by Microsoft.
Yes.
So I've gotten to see that twice before. I hope Notion goes all the way and becomes a public company. I actually think this is also something that Ivan told me as a way to recruit me into the job. He said, do you want to continue working at Microsoft, or do you want to build the next Microsoft? And I think that was an inspiring vision for me to join Notion.
As you look at building the next Microsoft, and you talked about potentially going public at some point in time, I mean, how much of an aspiration is that? Are you actively considering that possibility?
We're investing a lot. I mean, in many ways, our business is already public scale. The fact that we're cash flow positive doesn't force us to hit the public markets right away. We don't have any needs for capital. But what we are doing internally is really trying to operate as a public company. And what that means is that we have our own forecasts for what we're trying to do every quarter, and we try to hit those. We are improving the internal controls. For example, making sure we're audited every year, and we're closing the books on time. We have all the right processes and controls, that we're compliant with all the things that larger enterprise needs. And so in some ways, we're actually doing everything we need to do to be a public company, and then that will give us an option to go public. And whether we take that option or not probably depends on a bunch of other factors, including...
What are the factors, besides, of course, the market conditions?
Market conditions, and I think there is...
Exits?
There is value in being private, which is that I think you can take many more long-term, bolder bets. So if you think about AI being a disruption, I think if we wanted to completely change our business model, we can do that much more easily as a private company than in a public company.
Yeah, because you're less accountable to outside stakeholders and more accountable to the vision that you have for the company. But what would you potentially think you may need to change, or could change, or would have to change as you look at the environment today?
Well, I think the big one that we're starting to see, at least in software lens, is potentially a shift away from like a seats-based pricing to a usage-based pricing. This idea that I think you can almost buy intelligence as a service might become more of an important thing that is important for us. And so today, Notion's very economical. It's like $10 to $20 a seat per month. You can buy it yourself, or you can buy it for your team. But you can also imagine a world where we have that base tier, but on top of that, if you want to tap into the maximum intelligence in terms of the best models to do your work, or get an AI intern, a lot of that could be based on usage, where you don't have to pay anything up front, but then as you use it more, as it does things for you, as it gives you specific outcomes, is when you have to pay.
So, as you look at the ecosystem, and we're seeing a lot of collaboration at this point in time, how do you approach partnerships? How do you approach collaboration, especially with the exciting companies that you're in the midst of?
We're partnering a lot in the last 6-12 months, and I think our focus for us is really around distribution. And so we're looking at a lot of different ways where are the knowledge professionals, where we can really plug into. So we've done a lot of things with investor community around the world, around making sure Notion is the tool every startups can get. We're talking to a lot of companies where people use other tools with Notion. So for example, Notion is used concurrently with Figma, it's used with Slack, these are all complementary tools.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm seeing is that more and more you want to make sure that these tools have context of each other. So like if I'm writing a document of a specific product, I should be able to tap into those designs in Figma, or I should be able to tap into the conversation happening in Slack. And so, we call ourselves the connected workspace.
Yeah.
And part of the connected workspace in the past used to be that things within Notion are connected.
Yeah.
I think as I think about the future, I think it's our job to make sure things outside Notion, all the tools you use, are connected as well.
But that's a very different world, right? I mean, especially when we're so used to living in these walled gardens, it's a very different approach to take.
I think so, but I think that's actually going to be really important because each tool is going to try to tap into AI to help you do things, right? And AI will operate best when it has the context. And so if you're using 5 different tools and they're all isolated, then I feel like AI doesn't have context on what's happening in the other 4. And so I'm not sure if it happened like broadly, but I think at least within the core tools you use, I think it's very important for AI to have that context. And there's some new protocols like MCP that's come up that's allowing each tool to make sure that like you have that connectivity and that openness with other tools.
So how much of a Notion nerd are you yourself?
I use it quite a lot. So of course I use it a lot at work, but then I track my angel investments on it as well in a database. I also tracked my daughter's kindergarten applications on it. I collaborated with my wife on it.
Is it as competitive as India?
It is. It's a funny story. I think we moved back in 2018, and we were applying to kindergarten. I remember preschool or kindergarten, and they said, "Oh, your kid's only 2 years old. You should have applied when you were pregnant."
Yes, clearly as competitive.
Clearly as competitive.
But as you look at the exciting, cool stuff that's happening around you, outside of everything that's happening in Notion, of course, lots that keeps you on your toes and is inspiring you. But what are you inspired by as you see what's happening outside?
There's a lot happening. I feel like in some ways, it feels like the renaissance, like AI has enabled all these different things that probably were not possible. One of the things I was looking at in the last week was just consumer hardware. Like there's a lot of like bold consumer hardware companies. Many of them actually started by Indians here. There's like Matic, the cleaning robot, that is incredible, and there's the Daylight computer, which is like like a new hybrid of Kindle and iPad. And I don't know, hardware used to be like a tough space. Investors would shy away from it. But because of AI and the software layer, I think people are realizing that if you can actually build the right hardware that plays with software, I think you can build some incredible experiences. So I'm pretty excited about that.
So you think that it could be potentially a new breakout moment for hardware? I mean, OpenAI possibly looking at hardware as well.
I think so. I think I don't know, if I asked you 5 years ago, would you think you need any other hardware besides your iPhone? I think the answer was probably not. But now suddenly, like, I already wear glasses. So for me, if like a bunch of stuff existed on my glasses, like I might not have the phone on me. The fact that a lot of stuff happens on my watch. But also like all these incredible consumer hardware, like I think cleaning robots, people were annoyed with them because like they would miss 2 times out of 10. But they're getting so much better now that I think there's going to be more robots. Someone showed me the other day, like this machine that prints dosas. It's incredible.
Machine that prints dosas, okay.
Literally, you put the batter on one side and it prints dosas, which and perfectly, right? And so, like, I think there's something has shifted in the last couple of years where
on the hardware side,
suddenly, like, the hardware is there, but then hardware combined with software, the ability to actually control that and have that experience here seems to have changed in the last couple of years.
You know, you were talking about luck and serendipity and being at the right place at the right time. And I know in the past you've spoken about how entrepreneurship is a little bit like going surfing. So as you see, you know, the environment today, what's the next big wave that you're hoping to catch?
Well, the biggest wave is AI. I think it's probably the biggest wave I've experienced in my short 15-year career. And when you get a wave that big, I think you can kind of focus on that wave, because it feels like one that can cause a lot of, not disruption, but I think it's like what creative destruction in some ways. Like I think you can feel it, like all these companies that existed for decades, you thought they could never be displaced, suddenly feels like, wow, there's an opportunity to do it. I think that...
but don't you worry about that for yourself as well?
Of course. Which is why we always try to reinvent ourselves. You know, we launched our AI product 2 weeks before ChatGPT came out, because we could sense something's going on. Like the models are getting better. We applied it to our own product and we realized like, oh, so much of the knowledge work can actually be better. And before somebody else could say, we're Notion, but with AI, we became that company. And we have to continue to do that. We have to continue to win the right every week to be the sort of the most advanced, most modern company. And the day we stop doing that will be the day we'll die.
So, you know, the right to win in an AI world up against the big boys with deep pockets, you know, Zuckerberg hiring every AI specialist at this point in time, throwing in the big bucks. What are some of the big challenges that you foresee in being able to deliver on that right to win?
I think you said it right. There's incredible, like the talent market is incredibly hot, and I think our ability to attract the best talent is going to be really important in that journey. And part of the draw for people to work at Notion versus maybe the big labs or the big tech is not because of like the compensation or the food in the office or the fact that you have already a public company. The fact is people will join us because they're drawn to our mission and our ethos of a company, where we are not trying to replace humans, we're trying to augment them. We are much more humane in the way we design our products. We're really focused on making people feel positively when they use our software. That's not something that other companies are trying to do. And so I think we don't get to hire everyone, but we get the subset of people who believe in those ethos. I think you and I were talking about all the billboards you see when you come from the airport. And I think every billboard is talking about AI and talking about, you know, the AI SDR to the, you know, to the AI marketer or whatever.
You're not talking AI on the billboards. I saw that.
Even our AI stuff is very much talking about having your own dream team. Because we think if we can help every individual in this world to now have a team of AI agents that can help them be better, more productive, be able to like be more creative, we would have done our job well.
So, you know, you said you're already operating with a public company mindset. You're looking at delivering on numbers every quarter. You're optimizing for efficiency and for cost. Where do you believe Notion is likely to be in the next 5 years? What's the internal targets that you've set? You talked about $1 billion in ARR, and that's potentially the target in the foreseeable future. But outside of that, what are some of the key metrics that you've put on the drawing board as the aspirational targets over the next few years?
So our goal is, like, primary goal is to make the product ubiquitous. And so I really think about how do we make sure that hundreds of millions of knowledge workers are using the product. And my own personal goal is, like, in about 10 years, my daughter will go to college. And my hope is by the time she goes to college, every person in her classroom is on Notion.
Is on Notion. That's the demographic that you're going after.
That's the demographic I'm going after, yeah.
But let me ask you to leave us with one piece of advice that has stayed true for you through the course of your entrepreneurial journey of starting up the many ventures that you attempted to before Pulse, then Pulse, and now Notion. What is the one piece of advice that you would leave all young entrepreneurs with?
One thing I learned when I was at Stanford, I took this course at the design school there, and I think one of the values they had was about this bias towards action. And I thought I think it really materially changed my life, because I feel like before that, I actually had ideas. Like, I was thinking of startups, I was thinking of all the ways I can be solving it, but I would not do anything about them. I would just sort of keep it in my head. And I think one of the things I learned at the design school was that actually, like, you can create a prototype. Like, you can create a prototype in 5 minutes. You can prototype something that might take you 2 weeks, and it just increases in resolution. But actually doing something about it enables you to have that conversation. It could be a sketch where I can just show it to you, and now we suddenly having a conversation. And so I think one of the things I've thought about is like, okay, well, in this world of AI, are humans going to have the agency to go do things? And if they can, then suddenly they'll be able to tap into anything that they want to do, right? Because you'll suddenly get help on the design front, on the building front, on the selling front. And so I really feel like this bias towards action, bias towards wanting to do things.
And you believe AI is only going to make it better, and it's going to make it easier for people to actually be able to do things and get things started?
I think so. That, but also it's going to be important for humans to survive, the agency to be there, right? If you're going to wait for your manager to say something that you have to do, then at some point the manager may prefer the agent, right? And so I think part of it is like, well, what's really important in today's world is whether you have the agency and the creativity to want to do things. Because if you do, couldn't be a better time to build things.
So how do we beat the machine at this point in time? I think that's the big question that everyone's asking, right? I mean, and I think there is, and of course, we've gone through cycles of fear and what will technology do and the kind of disruptions that it will bring about. But given the fast pace of change, what is it? What are the questions that we should be asking ourselves as people as we deal with this?
I think to me, it's very inspiring and optimistic, where I think if we can just take some of the ideas we have and put them into work, I think those things are now 10 times easier to happen, right? And so, is a robot going to wake up and think of like a specific startup idea or a specific problem? Maybe, but I actually feel, I continue to believe like the humans that have agency will go do things and will be able to actually execute on those things. And I think that's how we will survive. It's like we will have the ability to think beyond just like, a monotonous day of like doing the things I have to do to like make my salary. I think we're going to be pushed even harder to think about not just that monotonous day, but think about the ways you're going to use your time to do new things, to build new things, to solve problems that you're seeing around yourself. And like, just take a walk in San Francisco or in Bangalore. I mean, I could take a walk and it's like 10 things come to my mind of all the things that could be better, right? Everything from public transportation to how someone's selling on the street and like what could be better for them to like, safety of, so I don't know. I think problems are actually around us. I think it's just a question of like, are we going to rise to the occasion and want to solve those problems?
So you feel hopeful today?
I'm very hopeful, more hopeful than I've ever been, because things that was so hard to actually enable that into action is going to be like available at almost no cost.
So what kind of investments are you making in what kind of companies as an investor today?
Investments, I feel like, so I started to do this as a side hustle, as a way to like creatively sort of involve myself with ideas that I'm not doing at work. And of late, I've been thinking about experiences as like as a thing that feels like AI safe. And so actually the two investments that I'm super excited about reading updates every month is a company called Such Paneer here, which makes the best paneer in America.
Such Paneer, okay.
And the other one is Dandelion Chocolate, which is in San Francisco. And as a software entrepreneur, I feel like I live and breathe software all the time.
Yeah.
But actually seeing a chocolate maker and a paneer maker
be the two big bets that you're making at this point in time.
I feel like inspired by, I don't know, I feel like investing to me is less about maximizing financial outcome. To me, it's about learning. And I feel like the things I learned from reading those updates are so interesting because I don't run a retail shop and I don't run a big manufacturing. And so somebody said it well where they said, you know, investing is like, you'd appreciate this, which is like, it's like tuition fees with a call option. You know, like it might work, but you're paying tuition to learn about a new business.
About a new business. Well, we hope that you continue to learn many things about new businesses that you potentially invest in, but also, you know, every day is different at Notion, as you've just explained to us, and we wish you the very best of luck over the next few years with what you're attempting to do. But thanks very much, Akshay, for joining us here on Voices from the Valley. Akshay Kothari here, talking to us on Voices from the Valley on what is next as far as Notion's future is concerned. From all of us here on the team for now, thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed the program, then write into us, log on to our website, and of course, visit us on social media. Everything is there for you. Goodbye, and thanks very much for watching.